The late afternoon sunlight streamed weakly through the curtains of the living room, highlighting the dust motes floating in the air. Olivia sat on the edge of the couch, her hands clenched tightly in her lap, as she stared at Victor. He was sprawled back in his recliner, his arms crossed like a man accustomed to commanding a kingdom, not a house he hadn't paid a dime toward in years. "You're serious?" Olivia's voice trembled, though she fought to keep it steady. "You want me to give you $3,000 on top of the I already hand over every month?" Victor didn't flinch. His graying hair caught the light, his face hard and sharp, a permanent sneer pulling at his mouth. He leaned back a little further, tapping the arm of the chair like a judge about to deliver a verdict. "I need a new car," he said simply, his tone clipped and matter-of-fact. "The old one's falling apart. I don't see what the big deal is, you've got the money." Olivia felt her chest tighten, as if invisible hands were squeezing her ribs. She wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, but no humor came. "The big deal, Victor," she snapped, her voice breaking, "is that I've already sacrificed more than enough for this household. I cover the mortgage. I pay the bills. I buy the groceries. I even cleared Ethan's credit card debt when it got out of control. And now you want me to buy you a car?" "Yes." His voice rose, booming through the small room. "Because I deserve it. I've done enough for this family. It's time you pulled your weight." Pulled her weight. The words struck her harder than a slap. For 4 years, Olivia had been the financial backbone of this house. She had worked late nights, weekends, and even given up career opportunities to ensure the household never fell behind. Meanwhile, her husband Ethan and his father Victor treated her paycheck like a bottomless ATM. And now, the first time she tried to draw a line, she was being called selfish. "I'm not doing it." Olivia rose to her feet, her voice shaking but firm. "You'll have to figure out another way." Victor's face twisted, the vein in his forehead bulging as his fists clenched on the armrests. "You're just like your mother," he spat, his voice filled with venom. "Always thinking you're better than everyone else." Before Olivia could respond, Victor lurched forward with startling speed for a man his age. He shoved her hard, both hands slamming into her shoulders. She stumbled backward, her heels slipping on the polished hardwood floor. The world blurred, and then she was tumbling down the staircase. The impact was brutal. Her arm twisted beneath her as she landed at the bottom, her head pounding with a dull, throbbing ache. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Pain radiated through her body in jagged bursts, her vision swimming with tears. Above her, Victor stood at the top of the stairs, his face contorted with fury. "That's what happens when you don't respect me," he bellowed before storming back into the living room. Olivia blinked through the haze of pain, her ears ringing. A shadow fell over her, and she tilted her head back to see Ethan at the top of the stairs. His face was blank, almost bored, his expression one of mild irritation rather than concern. "You should have just given him the money, Olivia," he said with a shrug. "You know how he gets." Olivia's heart clenched tighter than her bruised arm. In that single moment, lying on the cold floor, she realized something crystal clear. She was utterly alone in this house. It hadn't always been like this. When Olivia married Ethan, she thought they were building a partnership, a life rooted in shared goals and support. Ethan had been charming, ambitious, always talking about dreams of starting his own business. When his father's health began to decline, Ethan convinced her to move into Victor's house. "It'll just be for a while," he had promised. "Dad needs help and we'll save money." Olivia had agreed, believing they were making a sacrifice for family. But the reality was far different. Within months, she was paying the mortgage, the utilities, and the groceries. Victor's declining health didn't stop him from demanding things: expensive meals, new furniture, money for his doctor's appointments that always seemed to involve the casino an hour away. Ethan quit his job under the pretense of being there for Dad, but in truth, he had grown comfortable lounging on the couch while Olivia carried the weight of everything. Every time she pushed back, Ethan guilted her. "It's family, Liv. You can't put a price on family." Family. The word that had become chains around her neck. That night, Olivia packed a bag with trembling hands. Her arm ached, and her head throbbed from the fall, but adrenaline pushed her forward. She didn't say a word to Ethan or Victor as she stuffed clothes into a duffel bag, grabbed her purse, and slipped out the front door. Her heart pounded as she pulled her car onto the road, the house shrinking in the rearview mirror. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't stay. The neon glow of a roadside motel welcomed her like a lifeline. She checked in, her voice shaking as she gave her name to the clerk. In the small, stale-smelling room, she collapsed onto the bed, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. For years, she had been their safety net, their stability, their source of endless support. Without her, they would crumble, and this time, she wasn't going to catch them. The next morning, her phone felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds as she scrolled through her contacts. Finally, she pressed call. "Hello, this is Sophia Morgan's office." Olivia swallowed hard, her throat dry. "Sophia, it's Olivia. I need your help. It's about my husband and his father." Sophia's voice carried a steadiness that Olivia instantly clung to. She explained everything in a rush, words tumbling out faster than she intended. The bills, the mortgage, Ethan quitting his job, Victor demanding more and more. Then her voice cracked as she described the moment at the stairs, Victor's shove, the sharp tumble, the way Ethan had stood there and shrugged as if her pain were an inconvenience. Sophia listened carefully, her tone professional but laced with compassion. "You've been financially supporting both of them entirely?" she asked, double-checking. Olivia nodded even though she knew the lawyer couldn't see her. "Every expense. For 4 years. It all comes from my salary. The mortgage, utilities, groceries, everything." "And the house is in your name?" "Yes. They couldn't even qualify for the loan without me. I pay for it. I own it." A silence followed, then Sophia's voice softened, carrying something that sounded almost like satisfaction. "Then this isn't their house. It's yours. We'll start with eviction papers. Both of them." The word eviction landed like a stone in Olivia's chest. Guilt mixed with relief, twisting inside her until she almost felt sick. For years she had put their needs above her own, convincing herself that keeping the peace was more important than standing up for herself. But the night at the bottom of the stairs had stripped away all her illusions. "What about Victor pushing me?" she asked hesitantly. "That will be included," Sophia replied firmly. "We'll document the assault. And we'll pursue damages for financial exploitation. You're not just walking away, you're holding them accountable." Something inside Olivia stirred. It was small, fragile, but it was there. The first flicker of power she hadn't felt in years. The days that followed blurred together. Olivia went to work each morning, keeping her head down, her co-workers none the wiser about the storm brewing in her life. At night, she returned to the motel, the stale air heavy with loneliness, but strangely freeing. With Sophia's guidance, she began collecting evidence. Bank statements, receipts, screenshots of text messages where Ethan or Victor had demanded money. Seeing it all laid out was both validating and devastating. She had poured tens of thousands into a household that had given nothing in return. She sat on the edge of the motel bed one night with the papers spread around her. The numbers glared back like a cruel spotlight, but this time they didn't make her feel small. They were proof that she hadn't imagined the weight she carried, proof that she hadn't been selfish for feeling used. Sophia encouraged her to write down everything about the night on the stairs. Every detail, from Victor's twisted expression to the cold indifference in Ethan's eyes. The memory made Olivia's skin crawl, but writing it down gave her a sense of release. She wasn't just replaying it in her head anymore. She was building a case. Meanwhile, she began to quietly prepare for the life she wanted next. She found a small apartment close to her office, nothing fancy, but hers alone. On weekends, she drove back to the house when she knew Ethan and Victor were out, gathering her belongings one carload at a time. The house felt hostile, its silence punctuated by the echoes of their demands, but each trip gave her a sense of momentum. With every box she carried out, she felt lighter. Grace noticed the change in her first. Over coffee one afternoon, she leaned across the table, concern written across her features. "You've been distracted lately. Is something going on at home?" Olivia hesitated, torn between secrecy and the desperate need to be heard. Finally, she whispered, "I left. I'm filing for eviction and a lawsuit. Against Ethan. Against Victor." Grace's eyes widened, then softened with pride. "Olivia, that's incredible. You're finally standing up for yourself." The words made her throat tighten. "It doesn't feel incredible. It feels terrifying. They've made me believe for so long that I can't survive without them. But now," she trailed off, searching for the right words. "Now I think maybe I can." Grace reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "You don't think. You know. You're stronger than they ever gave you credit for." At night, alone in her apartment, Olivia would lie awake staring at the ceiling. The fear was always there, threatening to claw at her resolve. What if they fought back? What if Ethan turned on her in court? What if Victor twisted the story and made her look like the villain? But then she'd picture the moment she served them the papers. She imagined Victor's smugness cracking, Ethan's indifference shattering. That vision gave her the strength to keep going. Sophia worked quickly. Within weeks, eviction papers were ready, along with a civil lawsuit demanding damages. "They won't take this well," she warned during one late-night call. "You need to be prepared for the backlash." Olivia straightened her shoulders, gripping the phone tighter. "I've lived with their backlash for years. I can handle it." The night before the papers were served, Olivia couldn't sleep. She sat in her empty apartment, her suitcase still half unpacked, a glass of wine untouched on the counter. Her heart raced at the thought of what was about to happen. For so long, she had been trapped in a cycle of giving, of sacrificing, of believing that family meant enduring abuse in silence. Tomorrow, that cycle would end. When morning came, Sophia met her outside the house. Olivia's pulse hammered as she followed her up the familiar walkway. The place looked different now, more like a battlefield than a home. Sophia rang the doorbell, her stack of papers crisp and heavy in her hand. Victor answered. His scowl deepened when he saw Olivia standing beside the lawyer. "What do you want?" he snapped. "You've been served," Sophia said smoothly, handing him the papers. "You and your son are required to vacate this property within 30 days. Additionally, my client is filing a civil lawsuit against you both for assault and financial exploitation." Victor's face turned red, his hands trembling as he flipped through the pages. "You can't do this. This is my house." Olivia's voice was steady, surprising even herself. "No, Victor. It's mine, and you're not welcome anymore." Ethan appeared behind his father, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What's going on?" he mumbled. Victor shoved the papers into his hands. "Your wife thinks she can kick us out. Can you believe this?" Ethan's brow furrowed as he scanned the documents. "Olivia, this is insane. You can't just—" "I can," she interrupted, locking eyes with him. "And I did." For the first time in years, silence filled the house, thick and heavy. Victor's face twisted in fury, Ethan's in disbelief. And Olivia, her chest tight, her knees weak, felt something she hadn't in a very long time. The days after serving the eviction papers were some of the most tense of Olivia's life. Every time her phone buzzed, she jumped. Every time she walked to her car after work, she scanned the parking lot, half expecting Victor's hulking figure or Ethan's accusing glare. But neither came to her directly. Instead, the silence stretched, and in some ways that silence was worse. It was a quiet storm building, waiting. Victor refused to leave quietly. Olivia knew at the moment she drove past the house one afternoon and saw him out front, pacing the porch, muttering angrily into his phone. He stopped when he spotted her car, his face contorting into a scowl so sharp it cut right through the windshield. She didn't stop. She didn't roll down her window. She just drove on, gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles whitened. Sophia warned her this was coming. "He'll try to intimidate you. He'll push every boundary he can. But don't engage. We'll let the court handle it." And so Olivia stayed silent. She focused on work, on her new apartment, on reclaiming pieces of her life that had been buried under years of exhaustion. Yet every night, fear whispered to her. What if the court sided with them? What if Victor somehow twisted everything, painted her as the aggressor, turned Ethan against her completely. The hearing date approached faster than she expected. Olivia sat in Sophia's office the night before, documents spread out across the polished wooden table. Bank statements, mortgage papers, medical reports documenting her bruises from the fall. It all looked so stark, so undeniable. And yet her stomach churned. Sophia studied her. "You're nervous. Wouldn't you be?" Olivia replied, her voice shaking despite her best effort to keep it calm. Sophia leaned forward, her tone steady. "Listen to me. You have everything in your favor. Ownership, financial records, medical evidence. They have nothing but entitlement. We've got this." Olivia wanted to believe her. She clung to those words as she walked into the courthouse the next morning, her legs trembling, her palms clammy. Grace came with her, squeezing her hand so tightly it was like an anchor holding her down in reality. Inside the courtroom, Victor looked smug despite everything. He sat beside Ethan, who slouched in his chair, avoiding Olivia's eyes. Victor whispered into his son's ear, his expression gleeful, as though this were a game he intended to win. The judge called the case, and suddenly everything moved quickly. Sophia stood tall, presenting their evidence with precision. Ownership documents proved the house belonged solely to Olivia. Bank statements showed years of one-sided financial support. Medical reports documented her injuries from Victor's shove. Victor attempted to interrupt, his booming voice echoing through the courtroom. "She's lying. She begged us to live there. She wanted us there." The judge silenced him with a sharp rap of the gavel. "You'll have your turn, Mr. Collins." When Victor finally did take the stand, his arrogance betrayed him. He scoffed at questions, dismissed evidence, and twisted details until they barely resembled reality. But every time Sophia countered with documentation, his bluster deflated just a little more. Then it was Olivia's turn. She walked to the witness stand on unsteady legs, swearing to tell the truth. Her voice wavered at first, but as she spoke, something shifted. She told the story of the late nights working overtime to pay bills, of Ethan quitting job after job without concern, of Victor demanding control of the house he had no claim to. She described the night on the stairs, the shove, the fall, the way Ethan had stood by without lifting a hand to help. Her voice grew stronger with each word, her fear melting into determination. By the time she finished, the courtroom was silent. Even Victor seemed momentarily at a loss for words. The judge's decision came swiftly. The house is legally and solely owned by Ms. Olivia Carter. Mr. Victor Collins and Mr. Ethan Collins are hereby ordered to vacate the premises within 7 days. Furthermore, this court finds sufficient evidence to proceed with Ms. Carter's civil claims for damages regarding financial exploitation and assault. A trial date will be set. Olivia exhaled, the breath shaking out of her like a dam breaking. Victor erupted, shouting obscenities as bailiffs moved in to restrain him. Ethan just sat there, staring at the table, his shoulders hunched. Grace squeezed her hand as they left the courtroom. "You did it." But the fight wasn't quite over. A week later, Olivia stood on her own front lawn, flanked by a sheriff's deputy. The eviction deadline had passed, and Victor had refused to leave. His voice boomed from inside, furious and desperate, while Ethan lingered in the background like a ghost. The sheriff knocked firmly on the door. "You've had your notice. You're leaving today." Victor appeared, red-faced, spitting venom. "She's a liar. She tricked you all. This is my house." "It's not," Olivia said calmly, standing a few feet away. "It never was." The deputy's presence left Victor with no choice. He and Ethan were forced to gather their things, muttering curses under their breath. Watching them stumble out, arms loaded with boxes, Olivia felt an overwhelming mix of emotions, grief for the years lost, anger at their audacity, but most of all, relief. When the door finally shut behind them, the silence that filled the house was unlike any she'd ever known. Not heavy, not hostile, just quiet. Peaceful. She walked through each room slowly, fingertips brushing the walls, reclaiming the space as her own. The house felt different now. Lighter. like it was breathing again, and so was she. That night, Olivia sat on her couch with Grace beside her, sipping tea in the dim glow of a lamp. "It's over," Grace said softly. Olivia shook her head. "Not yet. The lawsuit is still coming. But this prison, they're gone." For the first time in years, Olivia let herself smile, small but real. She didn't know what the future would bring, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was free, and she would never let anyone take that from her again. The house was hers again, but Olivia quickly learned that freedom wasn't a switch that flipped overnight. The first week after Victor and Ethan were gone, she woke each morning half expecting to hear Victor's booming voice echoing down the hall or Ethan complaining about something trivial. Instead, there was only silence. It was disorienting, almost unreal. She spent evenings cleaning every room, not because they were especially dirty, but because she needed to scrub away every trace of them. She repainted walls, rearranged furniture, opened windows to let in fresh air. Each small act felt like a reclaiming. But sometimes, in the stillness, a memory would strike, a slammed door, a cruel laugh, the moment on the stairs, and she'd sit down, trembling, unsure if she'd ever truly shake their shadows. Grace became her anchor. She visited often, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to sit on the porch with her and sip coffee. One night, Olivia confessed, "I thought getting them out would fix everything, but I still feel haunted." Grace nodded knowingly, because it wasn't just about the house. They chipped away at you for years. That doesn't heal in a week. Those words stayed with Olivia. Healing wasn't about rushing, it was about patience, about giving herself permission to feel the scars without letting them control her. Sophia continued to press forward with the lawsuit. The process was exhausting, endless paperwork, meetings, depositions. But this time Olivia didn't feel alone. Sophia was sharp and unrelenting, dismantling Victor's bluster with cold, hard facts. Ethan avoided most of the proceedings, showing up only when ordered, his once carefree charm gone, replaced with hollow resignation. When trial day came, Olivia dressed carefully, choosing a simple navy dress that made her feel steady, strong. She sat in the courtroom again, but this time she wasn't trembling. This time she was ready. Victor tried to defend himself, spinning lies about how Olivia had begged them to stay, how she had enjoyed supporting them. But Sophia countered every claim with evidence, bank statements, witness accounts, the medical report from Olivia's fall. Each piece of proof chipped away at Victor's facade until even the judge seemed impatient with him. When Olivia took the stand, she didn't cry this time. She spoke clearly, steadily, about the years of financial exploitation, the emotional manipulation, the night of violence. She didn't embellish, didn't dramatize. She just told the truth. And the truth was enough. The judgment came down decisively. Victor and Ethan were ordered to pay damages for both the assault and years of financial exploitation. The numbers weren't life-changing, but they were symbolic. For the first time, they were being forced to give back, however small, instead of taking. Victor erupted in fury, shouting at the judge, his voice echoing as bailiffs dragged him out. Ethan sat silent, eyes cast down, as if finally realizing what he had lost. Olivia didn't look at either of them. She didn't need to. Walking out of the courthouse that day, the sunlight felt different on her skin. Brighter, warmer. Grace hugged her tightly, whispering, "It's done. It's really done." That night, Olivia sat on her porch alone, listening to the quiet hum of crickets. For the first time in years, she let herself dream. She thought about travel, about maybe going back to school, about finding joy that wasn't tied to anyone else's demands. The possibilities stretched out like an open road. Still, the journey wasn't without moments of grief. Some nights, loneliness hit hard, and she questioned if she'd made the right choice. But then she'd remember the bruises, the shouting, the years of exhaustion, and she knew there was no going back. One weekend, she invited Grace and a few coworkers over for dinner. They laughed around the table, music playing softly in the background. At one point, Grace leaned over and whispered, "Look at you. This house finally feels alive." Olivia smiled, looking around at the warmth, the laughter, the light spilling from the windows. She realized it wasn't the house itself that mattered. It was her reclaiming it, her choice to fill it with love instead of fear. Months later, standing in her backyard as spring arrived, Olivia planted flowers along the fence. Each seed she pressed into the soil felt symbolic, a promise to herself that she was building something new, something that belonged only to her. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Olivia sat back on her heels, dirt on her hands, a smile tugging at her lips. She wasn't the woman who had fallen down those stairs anymore. She wasn't the woman who had begged for scraps of kindness from people who thrived on her pain. She was something stronger, something freer. The shadows of Victor and Ethan might linger in memory, but they no longer defined her. They no longer controlled her. Olivia closed her eyes, inhaled the scent of fresh earth, and felt a surge of peace. Her story wasn't over, it was just beginning. And this time, it was hers alone. And with that, our story comes to an end, but the real story begins with your thoughts. What would you do if you were in this situation? Let me know in the comments.